Back to the ETF Inspector. It's Wednesday, June 4th. This is the video for YieldMax weekly paying funds Ulti, the Ultra Option Income Strategy ETF, and LFGY, the Crypto Industry and Tech Portfolio Option Income Fund. It's also, since it's Wednesday, it's Declaration Day for all the weeklies, as well as Group D. So before we get into that, just a reminder, I'm on X, ETF Inspector. I repost the stuff from YieldMax as well as when videos are coming out, things like that. So follow me if you want that kind of stuff. Heads up, all the videos are here if you're not caught up. And luckily, in the thumbnail, I put the day, the date, what it is. So just a real quick look, you're able to tell what you're looking for. They're also grouped into playlists between the 2 weeklies and the 7 monthlies that I cover. All right, we'll talk about the declarations real quick that got announced this morning around 7 a.m. And then we will get into our trades and holdings for Ulti and LFGY. So as far as the weeklies, we'll start there. Yeah, I did. Okay. So LFGY actually was our top paying weekly with a 46.64 cents. That comes out to a 60% annualized yield. Next was Chippy, 34.5 cents, 34% yield. RDTY, so you have these three, RDTY, QDTY, and SDTY are the 0 days till expiration option income funds. So R is on the Russell, Q is on the NASDAQ, and S is on the S&P. So RDTY paid 21.08, 21 cents. QDTY paid 23.07 cents. And SDTY paid 21.75 cents, all pretty similar. 24%, 27, almost 28%, and about 25%. YMAG, that consists of the MAG 7 funds, paid almost 21 cents, comes out to a 70% yield. GPTY paid 29.77 cents, that's a 33% yield. YMAX paid 17.21 cents. That's the fund of funds. That's a collection of all the individual funds that they have, and that's a 65% yield. And then Ulti, the other one in our video, 9.45 cents, so 78% yield. And then we'll talk about our guesstimates compared to what happened. But if you have any of these Group D, right, we talk about, obviously Misty's kind of the big, most popular one. Check out Retire on Dividends for that coverage if you haven't seen that already. AMZ we cover on Amazon, and Aptly we cover for Apple. So Winter, that's the inverse Misty, was the biggest payer this month. $4.56.59 cents. That's 150% yield. So biggest dollar amount. SIMC, that's on SMCI, paid over $3.30, and that's at over 200% yield. That's crazy. So that means in a year of collecting those distributions, you'd end up paying back your cost basis twice. Misty, I might have messed up here. I know that's not the right distribution. Hold, please. Let's go straight to the source. I must have started updating those and stopped. I did. Okay, scratch what I just told you. I know the weeklies are right. Scratch what I just told you on the monthly. So Winter paid $3.07. SMCY paid $1.57. Misty paid $1.47, so that's more than we were expecting. We're happy with that. XYZY paid 87 plus cents. AMZ paid almost 60 cents, 59.55. DISO paid 55.88 cents. We already talked about the weeklies. AIYY paid 32 and change, and Aptly paid 31.19 cents. Sorry about that. I guess when I was typing in the numbers, I must have got partially through it and then sidetracked. I know I did get a phone call while I was updating everything. So if my dad and uncle are watching, they'll know they messed me up. But all right, so let's get back to what we're talking about. So sorry about that. I won't make that mistake again. All right, we look at the trades. Decent amount of trades for the day, but we're going to notice something I haven't seen before. As we get down, obviously, Ulti always has to have the most trades. I think it's the rule. But the big difference today, LFGY did not make a single trade. So unless they just didn't get it on the update sheet, no trades for LFGY, so the video will be a little shorter on the back end. All right, let's start with the Ulti trades. We've hidden everything we've already talked about. That's why we jumped from sell 273 to 949. We'll bring it back out 1 week at a time when we go to make our week estimate. Before we get into it, let's look at how things turned out. So we said based on income alone, they could have paid out 1 cent. Based on the total of income and share value increase, they could have paid out 9.99 cents or 10 cents. Based on the IV, it was closer to 8 cents. My guess was 8.5. They paid almost 9.5 cents, so I was about 10% off on the guess. So everybody gets a refund for everything you paid for it. Okay, today's trades. They've been spending a lot of money lately, if you've been watching. So they bought more Hims and Hers, bought more Mara. We got out of Marvell, so we won't be talking about their trades anymore other than the closeout. Bought more TNA, added GameStop to this fund, so now GameStop's in both these funds, Ulti and LFGY. Added more IonQ, added more RH, and added more Reddit. So for the most part, we'll just be opening new positions based on these new stocks that were purchased, but there's a couple of times where they actually rolled their positions, bought the close and started new ones. ASTS is the first one. They closed this week's 25s and they opened next week's 2950s. This is one of the ones that got away from them. So end up being a loss, $764,000 to the negative to buy to close those and sell new ones. CrowdStrike, they closed out their 510 strike prices, and they sold to open 475 strike price, collecting $47,000 profit. Got too many new ones. CoreWeave, I didn't want to say the wrong thing. CoreWeave, they closed their 140s and the puts associated with them and opened 170s and puts to go along with them. So that's another loss, almost $850,000 loss. GameStop, they just started new positions, or actually added. I'm sorry, I had it right the first time. GameStop wasn't in this fund previously, so this is just new position. They picked 33 as the call strike price and 25 for the puts, collecting $321,000. Hims and Hers, they just added to the position, $60 calls, earning $11,900. IonQ, again, just sold calls to go along with the new shares they bought. 43 strike price, $41,000 profit. Mara, same thing, added to their 1650 call strike, collected an additional $36,000. Marvell, this is just closing out because they sold the shares, so we're not in the options anymore either. That cost us $525,000 to get out of that one. So that one went against us options-wise, but that means that the value of the stocks themselves went up as well, so we made money from the purchase of the shares to the selling of the shares. Oklo closed out this week's 60s and opened next week's 53, so they were able to drop that down, bring it more aggressive price, and added $400,000 or collected a net Reddit. This is just to go along with the new shares they bought. 117, $58,000 profit. RH, new options to go with the new shares. Chose 200 as the call strike, $131,000 profit. TNA, that's the triple leverage small cap bull, added to their $30.50 calls, $26,000 increase. And Upstart is another one that they rolled, closed out this Friday's, opened up next Friday's, had to take their 48 strike price up to 54. So anytime you're having to roll up, obviously the stock went against your option, so had to pay $443,000. So it was a losing trading day, $1.5 million. So that's 2 losing trading days in a row. But losing trading days come with gains in share value. So we'll take a look at how the stocks perform themselves. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. Let's try and get the perfect. Okay. Starting with C3.ai, the stock went up 2.38% to $26.28. Their $27 calls are still 2.7% out of the money. Increase in value of $207,000. AST Space Mobile went up 13.94. Forgot to talk about this in the beginning part. They were the biggest winner on the day for Ulti. An increase in value of over $1.6 million, going up to $28.69. We just talked about it. They bought to close these and rolled to a different one, so we will have the new information tomorrow on those. Broadcom, this is new. That was added yesterday. AVGO is the ticker. Went up 1.65% to 261.08. Calls are still 3.4% out of the money, and an increase of $169,000 in value. Coinbase lost 1.1% to an even 256. That takes their calls a little further out of the money. We were getting real close, so 1.5% still pretty close. $133,000 decrease in value. CrowdStrike, this is another new one added yesterday. They were the biggest loser on Ulti, loss of 5.77% to 460.56. $564,000 decrease in value. So they just started these options yesterday, and after the decrease today, they went ahead and closed those 510s and sold a new one closer to the money to gain more premium. CoreWeave up 8.39%, so another pretty big winner, over $1.5 million increase in value. $163.10 was the closing price. They closed out their 140 strike price. They have half at 140 and half at 160. So the ones they have left are 1.9% in the money, so they're kind of hoping for a little pullback between now and the end of the week to bring down the price of closing out those 160s. Still sitting with a decent, well, this was before all the trades happened, so they spent a good bit of that $46 million we saw in all the purchase of shares. First Solar up 0.28% to 159.81. That took their 157.50 calls a little further in the money, 1.45%. Increase in value of $19,000. FTAI, this one's new also from 1 or 2 days ago. Lost 0.43% to 122.82. That left their 122s still in the money and took their 123s slightly out of the money. A decrease of $47,000 in value. Hims and Hers lost a little over 2% to 53.61. These calls are getting pretty far out of the money now. 11.92%. $224,000 decrease in value. Robinhood up a little over 0.75% to 72.27. Still 3.78% out of the money. $119,000 value increase. IonQ, I don't know if you say IonQ or IONQ, lost 0.5% or $65,000 value. Went down to 39.61, and their calls are nearly 10% out of the money. Lululemon, it's another new one from, I believe, yesterday. Up a fraction, only $7,000 increase in value, over 25,000 shares. let's see, 335.19 was the closing price, and calls are 7.4% out of the money. Mara went up 2.22%, 1567. Their calls are at 15, so they are 4.28% in the money. And the stocks increased in value by 212,000. We don't care about Marvell anymore because we closed them out. MicroStrategy lost 2.4% to 378.10. Their calls are 7.1% out of the money, and it decreased in value by 350,000. Nvidia went up 0.5% to 141.92. Still slightly out of the money, 1.47%, increased by $91,000. Oklo lost 1.43%. We were talking about these in yesterday's video. They're getting so far away, we thought that they were going to head and buy to close and sell closer to the money, and they did. So 49.06 was the closing price, and they lost 212,000 in value. Decreased. Oracle's another new one. Lost 0.66% to 168.03. Their calls are 5.64% out of the money. $55,000 decrease in value. Palantir lost 2.37% to 130.01. They have calls almost evenly split at 132 and 136. They're 1.5% and a little over 4.5% out of the money. $417,000 decrease in value. Reddit, another big winner, up 6.6% to 118.19. That took them from green, greater than 5% out of the money, to 1% in the money. 733,000. And if you're new here and the color coding doesn't make sense to you, red is in the money, meaning we're going to end up having to pay. Right, if it goes beyond the call strike price, that's when it becomes a positive number, and we're going to have to pay more to close them out. Yellow is close to the money, less than 5%, but in our favor, and green is greater than 5% in our favor. Rigetti lost 1.83% to 11.82, nearly 10% out of the money on the calls, and a $220,000 decrease in value. RH up 0.85% to 178.23. Calls are still 3.8% out of the money at 185, and $30,000 increase in value. We're getting close to the bottom. SMCI, Supermicrocomputer, up 2.1% to 44.13. In the money and keeps going further, almost 3.7%, but a $253,000 increase in value. Snowflake up 0.13% to 209.42. Still just about 0.25% out of the money, so we're flirting with danger here. As you can see, right, so technically, if it ended the way it is right there on Friday, at closing bell, these would be worthless. You'd be closing them for a penny. But with 2 days left, because of volatility and everything, time value still has $3.15 was what they started the day, what they would have cost to close. They went up slightly, but a day rolled by, so they'll probably end up being down a little bit from that tomorrow. TNA, this is one they added to the position. Lost almost 1% to $30.48. I thought about selling a put on them today. Teetering back and forth, can't decide. $100,000 loss, decrease in value. $30.48 was the closing price. And their calls are 1.5% in the money and 0.07% out of the money. 2 cents. If it goes up 2 more cents, they're at the money. TQQQ, the other triple leverage fund, up 0.81% to $73.87, $144,000 increase in value, and 1.1% in the money on those. $73 calls. Tesla lost 3.5% to 332.05. That took their 355 calls to 6.9% out of the money and decreased the value by $562,000. We don't own any shares of UNH, United Health. They just have a put spread on it. For some reason, everything about this whole fund is about selling calls, and then the stock they decided to start selling puts on has gone down every day since they started selling puts. So these 312 puts are now 4% in the money, with the stock ending at $300.40. We're pretty much at the money on the insurance side of that trade. Upstart lost 0.63% to $50.66. They went ahead and they had to roll these ones that were deeper in the money, the 48s, but the 52s are still 2.65% out of the money, decrease in value of $102,000. Vertiv Holdings up 0.42% to a 112.81, still slightly out of the money at 113, $33,000 increase. And finally, Vistra Corp lost 1.9% to 172.65. So these were, obviously 3.4% in the money, and luckily they didn't go ahead and roll them out. So another day went by, dropped by almost 2%. So they're going to be a good bit cheaper to, buy to close when we get there. So far, good decision on their part. You can ignore these numbers here. $2.4 million increase in value of the funds. So that with a $1.5 million loss in trades. All right, that's everything for Ulti, I believe, other than the stock ended at $6.26, and there was no change to the outstanding shares, still just under 60 million shares. All right, next, LFGY. We'll be able to go a little quicker because they didn't have a single trade. I still find that hard to believe. So we'll talk about, did a little bit better on this guesstimate. Based on their trades, they could have paid almost 52 cents, but we talked about the fact that they paid us more than they made last week just to keep us happy, just to pay the IV. So we didn't think they were going to pay the full amount. We don't really care about the negative based on the share value. The IV number came out to 43.85 cents. So we were saying we think they're going to pay between 43 and 52 because they made more than the IV. They'd give us a little bit extra, but at the same time, they'd need to keep some to make up for overpaying us last week. So I said 45. They paid 46.64. So I was off by 3.5%. So I get to keep your money on that one. Why do I have my screen so small? I don't know. I set up to make the video so everything will be a smooth transition, and then it does whatever it wants. And I can't drag it, so I'm done messing with it. Okay, LFGY itself had a nice day up, over 40 again. Good to see that again. So we'll go down through the different positions and see how they did. BitDeer up 2.63% to 1325. They have two sets of calls at 1.8 and 20% out of the money. And the good thing is that 20% out of the money is the larger position with 3,200 contracts. So those are going to be definite wins for the more major amount of money. Clean Spark, I shouldn't say definite, will go up 22% tomorrow and make me look like an idiot. Clean Spark up almost 3.5% to $9.53. Oh, I think I said we gained $113,000 in value there, gained $175,000 on Clean Spark, but that did take their large quantity of calls in the money by 0.3%. Smaller amount is still almost 5% out of the money. Coinbase again lost 1.1% to 256. Their calls are still 1.5% out of the money. So they were real close to the money at the start of the day. So they're, with another day going by and dropping further away, that cost to close is going to drastically decrease. $174,000 decrease in value. Core Scientific up 6.44%. This was the biggest winner for LFGY today. $12.56 was the closing price. Increase in value of $428,000, but this one hurts. They were already in the money by 2%, and now they're in the money by 8.4%. Surprised we didn't see them closing them out. Galaxy Digital up almost 5% to $20.08. Even with that, they're still 24.5% out of the money. $96,000 increase in value. GameStop lost 0.5% to $29.95. The majority of their shares or their options sold are at 31. They're 3.5% out of the money. They also have a smaller position that's 26.8% out of the money. Robinhood up 0.77 to 72.27, and they were already in the money and just got deeper, so that's going to be painful to close out. But increased by $54,000 in value. Hut 8 Corp up 5.92% to 1701. So we went from almost 3% out of the money to 3% in the money on those 1650s. $338,000 increase in value. iBit, iShares Bitcoin Trust, we don't do options on them, so on this fund, so it's just the shares themselves, lost 1.25% to 59.64. It was a decrease in value of 149,000. Mara Holdings up 2.22% to 1567. This might look funny. There's only a single option strike for Mara. These other ones are MBTX. 6,000 contracts plus, just went 1% in the money. $212,000 increase in value. No shares are held of MBTX. They just do a credit call spread on it. So 260 is the number we need to stay under to collect the maximum premium. It closed at 248.50, so they are 4.63% out of the money. Mercado Libre, or Meli, lost 1.09% to 2573.96. There's a decrease in value of 63,000, and that took us from 0.02%. So we were basically at the money. We got some wiggle room. We're now 1% out of the money. And as you can see, with 2 trading days left, that $30 premium to close those out is going to drastically decrease. MicroStrategy lost 2.4% to 78.10, a decrease in value of 330,000. They have an equal amount of calls sold at 385 and 387.50. They're 1.8 and call it 2.5% out of the money. NU Holdings lost 0.42% to 1194. Calls are 4.69% out of the money and $19,000 decrease in value. Nvidia up 0.5% to 141.92. That's taking their 142 almost at the money, 8 cents away. We need Nvidia to calm down the rest of the week. $16,000 increase in value. Opera up almost 2.5% to 1863. Calls are still 7.3% out of the money. $124,000 increase in value. PayPal up a little over 2% to 72.80. That took us from out of the money to in the money. 1.1% on these $72 calls. $71,000 increase in value. Riot Platforms up 5.5%. $9.50 was the closing price. And again, this was pretty much at the money. It was only slightly in the money, and now it ended the day well in the money. So they went from costing about a quarter to close when the day started to probably much worse by the end. They've also got 950s, which are exactly at the money, but it's a much smaller position, right? 5,600 contracts, each contract being worth 100 shares, and 241 contracts at the 950. $278,000 increase in value. Tesla was the biggest loser of LFGY with a 3.55% loss. 332.05 was the closing price. These shares are now 12% out of the money. A $210,000 decrease in value. And finally, Block, or XYZ, up 0.55% to 63.86, increase of 16,000 in value, and still slightly out of the money at 0.22% on those calls. All right, so overall, it felt like I said more losses than wins, but maybe not. You saw the thumbnail. It was kind of an even spread of reds and greens, but on both sides, there was more wins on the green side, more amount of money than loss, because both funds increased in value of their overall shares. Nearly $1 million over here on LFGY. There's 122 million. Well, that was as of the start of the day. We'll get the new number tomorrow morning, but it won't be much different. And 50,000 shares were added to the Outstanding shares bringing it up to 3,075,000. And we already talked about that. So I think that's everything we've got to talk about. So if you made it this far, thank you. Thanks for watching. If you're a subscriber already, I appreciate it so much. If you're not, please click the like button. I make videos for these funds pretty much every day. And today there'll also be another video coming out for the monthlies. So at the end, I like to do a dad joke of the day. Didn't really like the one on the calendar, so I saved it for the less popular video and looked up a different one. Not that it's that great, but anyway, here it is. Why do hamburgers go to the gym? So they can get bigger buns. And they better not skip leg day or they'll be in a pickle. Okay, that was corny. All right, I hope you did well in your trading, and good luck in tomorrow's trading. Have a good night.